changed on. David Brooks. You know, I've gotten more conservative, or he's got more liberal.
Well,
That's
an interesting.
He's
Yeah,
meeting in the middle.
he considers himself conservative the way he considered himself conservative a few decades ago. It's just the
Yeah.
ground has moved under it.
That's right.
Yeah,
Things are different now.
he's not a Trumpy at all.
No. Oh, boy, better believe it.
Trump is not conservative, he's a reactionary.
He's just crazy. I think that's see how long we survived. Can't imagine 4 years. Someone's gonna shoot a family member. You gotta do the whole works, can't just do him. Just be vice president and this. cabinet.
Just plan it out.
All right, everyone.
Can we get started soon? Because
Let me introduce the series and then let you take over.
Sure. Oh, turn it on. Turn the microphone on.
Turn the microphone on. Is that on now?
Yeah.
There we go. Can you hear okay?
Yep.
All right. So this is a 4-week series called Christianity or Democracy. The first 2 weeks, we're going to look at this tape that happened, I think, about a month ago. David Brooks spoke at Mount Vernon, and then you had that's the first part of it. We're just going to deal with the first part of it today, right? And then next
His lecture.
his lecture part. And then the next part of it is him sitting down with Judy Woodruff and answering questions from her and from the audience. And so we'll get through as much of that as we can next week. The week after that, I'm calling some things you should know about Christian nationalism.
As much as possible.
Yeah, it is. As much as we can squeeze into 45 minutes. Probably focused on the long ongoing effort to take over the public education system.
Yep.
And redirect public funds to private schools. Been going on a long time. And the last week will be sort of a quirk. There's a book out by Jonathan Rauch called Cross Purposes, and it talks about the historic relationship between the mainline Protestant churches and the national democratic system, and how that's all changed and how we really need that. And it's just kind of interesting take on things. That's what we'll end the year with that one. So here's Kathy.
I'm just gonna be the master of ceremonies for today's class. And this is, as Dan said, this is a conversation that they had, that David Brooks and Judy Woodward had. And this first part, it's him sort of giving an overview. And I'm not sure that it's so much about democracy. I mean, kind of the title took me by surprise, but it's about our culture and about his take on where we are at a cultural moment. And I just want you to think about it. And then after we watch it, it's about 20 minutes. After we watch it, I'm going to ask for people's responses and see whether we agree with where he thinks we are. And if there are parts of what he said that we agree with, and parts of what he said that we don't agree with, for whatever reason, and whether he makes us feel better. Does he make us feel better? Does he make us feel trouble? So those are my starting questions. And I'm just gonna turn off the microphone and press play.
Is this online for people?
Yes, it's on you. How's the volume today?
Jump to the next one.
Okay. Hello. This is actually what he talks about, but I
Yeah,
think I'm on the wrong video. They can change videos on me.
but,
Does he usually speak like that?
all right,
Yeah, he does. Okay. Let me go back. This is the one.
Okay.
Same spot tape. Then, okay, there we go.
I couldn't do it. Well, thank you. Mm. Oh. 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 Wow. Oh.
You're waiting. Raise it. Okay, we're gonna stop there and
It's great.
then next week we'll watch the interview part for Judy asking questions and he answers and pontificating. But we're gonna pass the microphone around. I'm gonna pass the microphone around to you guys to talk about just how you respond to this and what you make of it. And just let me fix the screen a minute. I'm gonna stop sharing. There. So I'll just go back to this screen. So who would like to, first of all, do we feel, did he make us feel better? Who wants to talk to that? How he made you feel listening to that? What's your response?
There's so much to take out of that delivery. It's overwhelming, but the big thing that hit me is being aware of all the change that's going on. It's very easy to get focused on terrible things happening right in front of me. And in our world and society, and then not see the bigger picture. So that was very valuable. Keep that in mind. Thank you. First, I have to say, I love this guy.
Right.
I read that book that he mentioned with his next one after that, which is something like Seventh Mountain, I don't remember. I think he's absolutely great. And I especially like the fact that he comes from a conservative background. And I find him easy to listen to, and I'll say despite that fact. So anyway, won't say any more about that. But I find his outlook hopeful. And having been in high school and then college during the 60s, I was in the middle of it and I was totally distracted by, being a young person at that time. And I didn't see how terrifying it probably was for adults, for my parents' generation and all the other adults. They probably thought the world was falling apart, the country was falling apart, and yet we didn't. So I found his ideas about current upheaval and his feeling that we'll get through it really hopeful. I thought that was because as he was talking about it, I was sitting there thinking, well, let's see, what do we do for this? And then he said, in about 2020, that feels about right. So wise, and he thinks we'll get through it. So that gives me hope.
Yeah, I agree with you that his pace of presentation was overwhelming. Because I was trying to think through the last thing he said while he was speaking, saying the next thing. It's hard to listen to him in that sense. But I have always been a fan of his when he's on PBS on Friday nights, and he is so level-headed and accurate about the things that he says. It's wonderful. He brings something that you don't expect to hear from people who are sort of right wing, and he's not. He's right down the middle on almost everything. And he criticizes things on the left and on the right. He's just really fair. I'd love to go back and hear that again, take some notes, discuss the different things, because there's so much packed in what you just said. The other really good thing that's uplifting about what he said was he sees these cycles that we go through. And so it makes you feel a little bit better that we will make it out of this where we are now and come back to something that's more reasonable.
I'd like to make a suggestion that you can go home and Google, this is on YouTube. So you can go to youtube.com. You can also just Google, David Brooks and Judy Woodruff. And this will pop up, this video will pop up and you can watch it again. And you can go ahead and watch the interview part of it. And then you'll be prepared for next week. You will have seen it once when Dan shows part of it again. And you can also take your time to listen to this part and you can sort of have a heads up for next week.
It's the kind of grounding that you need.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I know I've watched it a couple of times, so I have a little bit of advantage. He starts off discussing this conference that he was just at. And he said that the people there kind of had two different metaphors for talking about the moment we're in. And one metaphor he called gardening or weaving, where he said we have this society that's ruptured. And the way out of it is to somehow do something constructive and weaving. It probably means to like reach out to people of all different perspectives or bring society together, start healing society.
We think dialogue.
Yeah, that's, so I'll let you talk in a second. And then the other was the warfare idea. Now I'm a little unclear why he brought up Lord of the Rings, because I don't feel that that's a particularly good example where, I mean, I think what he was trying to say was that anyway, it's like depends on who you think's at war and who caused the war and how that works. But do you see this moment as more of a time when we have to fight or more of a time when we have to bring people together? Would be maybe two ways to look at that. So that Nancy will respond to that.
I'm just saying that you need to want to dialogue.
So you need to want to
You need
dialogue.
to want the dialogue. I mean, both parties need to be willing to dialogue, not just one. Yeah. That's tricky. Like others, I don't see television, well, Alan watches MSNBC, so I haven't seen him on, PBS, but I've read his stuff for a long time and read his book on paying attention to people and things like that. I think he, as you say, he's very level and I really like what he writes. And I guess I'm yearning for that dialogue and I don't know. Again, as you said, you need the other side, but just trying to think for some time about how you do that dialogue. Obviously you don't just go out there and state your position. You have to figure out how to reach out and how to communicate. And it's tough, but we absolutely need it. It's the only thing that'll heal us. Is an organized group called Crossing Party Lines that began simultaneously in Oregon. And Lisa Swallow is the originator here in Oregon. And this is pitiful, but somewhere on the East Coast. I don't remember who the man was. We met him. And for a couple of years, I attended meetings of that group. They have local meetings right here in Beaverton, sometimes in Portland, but I always went to the ones in Beaverton. And the whole point is that Lisa would put up a topic for I think I met monthly, maybe every other week. And it was always a very current and relevant topic. And then we would discuss it from two different, everybody who wanted could come. So of course, here in Beaverton, most of the people that came were liberal. We had some very outspoken libertarians who presented usually a very different viewpoint than I did. And I attended religiously and I really liked it and I thought this is how we should do things. And at some point I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I really tried and I think that is what we need to do. And wise people say that we need to be able to
listen to varying opinions. And I found it so unpleasant, I couldn't go anymore. So that's a tell on me. It's a confession. I found it too hard.
One thing I was struck by was how David Brooks has changed. I remember seeing him years and years ago. He was very astute, very focused, and very closed. And I couldn't believe how open he was. Then, when he talked about going to that place, that home, with all these kids, and one of them said, I don't shake hands, I hug. Oh my gosh, I think some of these experiences he had were a turning point for him to give him kind of free him up to be who we saw today. It's just kind of we're watching change all around us, including David Brooks. It was very nice.
And then going through a divorce also
And
happens.
he went through a divorce that was change, and a big change on him. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll stop talking after this. One more bit of information. I think it probably was the book that's called The Road to Character, because that's the first one of his books that I read. And I read that, it was new, and I read it probably in 2014, 2015. And he talked, and probably in that book, because that's where I would have seen this, about his divorce and how that changed him. He was raised Jewish, although he was not really a very observant Jew, I don't think. And that was a huge part of his presentation. But his wife that he married after that divorce, I think he didn't really in this discussion too much, but he really would credit her a lot with his change in approach to the world. And he has since converted to Catholicism because she's Catholic. So he now is Catholic. So he went from being Jewish to being Catholic. So indeed, he did change.
I associate his kind of viewpoint with what I call compassionate conservatism, or, that sort of view, which is very, very different from MAGA. I do have a question about, he also later in the talk, or sorry, talked about several different, you can call them cultures, but he talked about MAGA culture being one thing that some, community, talked about kinds of communities. He talked about MAGA being a community and the social justice community being a community. And that struck me as I could sort of understand that, because we understand the loneliness, the epidemic of people feeling so disconnected. And that seems to be such a crisis. I mean, I'm actually still surprised when he talks about things like, such a small percentage of young people feeling that they can trust anyone or that things are connected, because we don't see that. We're not part of that generation, so we don't really see it. But to go to such a violent, angry, alienating community as MAGA, that was kind of startling to me. And I don't know, I'm trying to think what that would correspond to these other historical points. If we had sort of cultures that were competing, or, and then something prevails and you end up with one of these perspectives either winning or they weave together or something. I'm not as much of an optimist as he is, that we're just going to get through this moment, and here we are with just another ripple of American, history that just goes on. I feel like we're in a moment where things are much more fundamentally threatened than I've seen them. And even looking back in history, and I think people like Heather Cox Richardson would also feel like this is unusually, they see the whole historical perspective. I've been reading historians for the last 5 years, trying to, see this and make sense of it from a historical perspective. But it just doesn't feel like necessarily that we're just gonna cruise through it. But I do think he's talking about people getting together on a more community level. You know, his hope is in going to those dinners and reaching out to people on a one-to-one basis and getting involved with your high school or getting involved with your soup kitchen or your church or whatever. I'm just not sure where that, my personal feeling is like, you know, where does that fit in with a government that's starting to build stormtroopers? To me, it's kind of scary. But I'm sorry, sorry to take that, but I just have to bring that point in because that's how I'm feeling.
We're short of time, but, I think once we get into this Christian nationalism, we're going to open up some of the origins maybe of where mega came from. We'll see.
There's something that I keep coming back to now, just recently, when I was in graduate school, I probably the first year, but in graduate school, I took an economics course, and developmental economics. And one day after class, I went up to the professor and I said, so what if we succeed at this developmental economics thing and population growth levels off? Or, what happens then? Because everything is built on growth. He said, we have absolutely no model for that. And now here we are.
How about anybody who hasn't shared an idea yet? Do you feel?
Let me just, this is the sense I have for my grandchildren. And other young people I've just spoken with, is that they do not look at the future in any kind of positive way whatsoever. I really don't think the end is near. And not in any religious sense, but they are not optimistic about the kind of lives they, or if they have children, and many have said they will not. They do not see anything good coming ahead. And I don't see a lot of young people.
I wonder if that's I know there's some sense that it's throughout the world, but if our society is particularly difficult that way, you know, how the kids, I know there's just so much going on all over the world.
Well, I have another experience. I have just I have 3 grandchildren. I think they have a lot of hope for what they can do, bring to the world, just the way they're involved now. That's just it's so biased. All I can see are these 3 children.
Yeah, I have to say my daughter's not hopeless. She's not miserable. You know, she's living her life and doing hopeful things and contributing, you know, where she can. She goes to protests and those different things, but it's kind of a scary time.
Yeah.
So,
Very uncertain.
so groups like this are really good. Well, it is about 10 off, and so probably should stop for today. But yeah, I do encourage you to go home and you enjoyed this, watch this again on YouTube, watch the interview ahead. Just go ahead and watch that because you know that's what Dan's gonna show next week. And then you'll be prepared to see what you think of that. I'm also wondering, you know, we have so many topics we could talk about in this class. You know, we have the new Pope. And we have like so many things I was thinking, you know, be interesting to have a discussion about. So just bring your ideas.
Refresh again our memory. What you mentioned, David Brooks on YouTube.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's David Brooks and Judy Woodworth.
Oh,
Judy Woodworth. But even if you just Google David Brooks interview or something like that, you probably get it because it was pretty recent.
great.
But yeah, it's Judy Woodworth and David Brooks.
This is part of the series of things that she's doing going around the country and talking to people and,
thought leaders.
Oh, yeah.
See, a lot of times these, going back to your idea about the discussions that you were going to, a lot of times it's progressives talking to progressives.
Yeah.
And progressives arguing with progressives, and there's a whole group of people who have written us off.
Yeah.
I feel, there's a group of people who have just said, they're the enemy, we're not even going to engage with them, we're going to squish them. We're gonna squish them in the schools, we're gonna squish them in the culture, so that's kind of,
Yeah, like they're a waste of time.
yeah, so we'll have to see what develops.
Yep.
Stay tuned. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Oh, my. Lots to think about. Why are people just so optimistic? Yeah. There's so much. Well, maybe it's to kind of work that out. So that we don't